Hello and welcome to the second webinar on the Southern Texas Drought and Weather Outlook. My name is Joel Lisenby. I'm the Regional Drought Information Coordinator for the Southern Plains region at NIDIS. If you missed our last webinar, you can find that at drought.gov. It was also linked in the invitation to this webinar. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge and sincerely thank our partners in producing this webinar. They are NOAA, the National Weather Service, the Office of the Texas State Climatologist, AgriLife Research and AgriLife Extension, and the USDA Southern Plains Climate Hub. The format for today's webinar will be some presentations from some experts, followed by some discussion. Following them, we're going to have some time for questions. If you have a question, please type it into the question box, and then when it's question time, I will read your questions and John and Victor can answer them. Our first presenter will be Dr. John Nielsen-Gammon. Dr. Nielsen-Gammon is a Regents Professor of Atmospheric Sciences at Texas A&M University. He's also the Texas State Climatologist and has held that position for the past 20 years. His research includes extreme rainfall, drought monitoring, climate data quality, and computer modeling. So without further ado, John, I'll pass the presenter baton over to you. And when you receive that, just go ahead and start.
Okay, let's see. I need to open system preferences, so stand by on that. It will happen soon. While the slides are coming up, I'm going to first describe where we are with the past couple of weeks, how things have developed compared to how we predicted them. Secondly, I'm going to talk about what's distinctive about this particular drought compared to past droughts. And finally, talk about the outlook for the next couple of weeks as we go forward. And oh, there we go. Let's see. Almost there. Hang on. I'm going to have to, apparently I can't share my screen for recording unless I quit GoToMeeting and go back in. Do you want me to do that? Take a quick minute to do that?
If that's what it takes, that will be fine.
All right, I'll be right back.
Okay, thanks, John. Sorry, everyone, about this delay.
Okay, I'm back and I should have capabilities here. Let's see. Now, to show my screen, what do I need to do? Oh, here we go. That's more like it. Let me go to slide mode and we'll be all set. Okay, so the current.
Thanks, John. We're seeing that. No problem. Thank you.
You got it?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, so this is where we sit as of the U.S. Drought Monitor that came out last week. Drought conditions extending all along the Texas coast, from Louisiana to Old Mexico and up the Rio Grande, up past Eagle Pass, and then on into San Antonio, and basically very south of Interstate 10. Changes were fairly minor over the past week, and they'll probably be minor again once this week's drought monitor comes out tomorrow. Our forecast was that we would start off with a week that was definitely dry, followed by something probably dry with some thunderstorms around, but they'd be fairly isolated. And chances of rain were predicted to improve sometime around the beginning of this week. So this is what we actually had the past 14 days. Here we're looking at the basically the southern third of Texas. And many parts of the region got zero precipitation, especially stretching from Laredo across almost to Corpus Christi. Didn't even really see a drop. There was a squall line that moved from north to south last week that it mainly stayed offshore once it reached South Texas. Some improvement in the northern parts of the region of concern, as well as a couple of isolated but fairly strong thunderstorms that moved across the lower valley. So compared to normal precipitation, most of the region saw less rain than they would normally get on average during the past couple of weeks, with just a few isolated exceptions. So all in all, unless you were really lucky, drought conditions got worse in this region. Now, I want to show you how the lack of rainfall is also being impacted by high temperatures. So I'm going to show a few charts like this. This would have to be for McAllen, Texas. Each one of those dots represents a particular year, and I'm looking at rainfall going up and down. The dry is down toward the bottom, 0 inches of rain over the past 5 months or so since December 1st. That's never happened, but there have been occasions where we've barely gotten an inch. Going from left to right, we're looking at the temperatures, the average daily maximum temperature over the same period. So the place you really don't want to be is over in the lower right-hand corner of this diagram, because that means you're getting the combination of very dry conditions, so not much water coming in, plus very hot conditions, which means whatever water there is evaporating fairly rapidly. And I've highlighted in orange all of the years starting in 2006. And 2020 is highlighted in particular. It's this dot over here. And one of the things that stands out on this is if you're looking at years or winters and springs that have been exceptionally hot and dry, they've all happened in the past 15 years or so. And we can look at a longer period of time, say the past 12 months, and same basic situation. It's not as unusually dry in terms of lack of rainfall for McAllen, but it's exceptionally warm. The 7 warmest years on record from beginning of May around to the beginning of May again have all been in the past 15 years. And the problem is not limited to McAllen. I've got one other place to show you statistics for. This is Victoria, Texas. Sorry, I forgot to put the label on it, but Victoria shows a similar situation. Over the past 12 months, it's been not the driest, but one of the droughtiest when you consider the combination of temperature and humidity. Arguably, the 3rd or 4th driest on record in terms of combined temperature and rainfall since around the middle of the 20th century for Victoria. And just looking at the period since beginning of December, Victoria's actually had its hottest on record in terms of daily maximum temperatures. And we combine that with the lack of rainfall, it certainly comes in among the top 5 driest over this period. And you may notice this general tendency for the orange dots, even when it rains a lot, to be to the right of the blue dots, which are earlier in time. So that indicates that no matter whether it's wet or dry, typically conditions nowadays are about 2 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than they would have been, say, 30 or 50 years ago. And that, of course, exacerbates the severity of drought because it depletes moisture from bare soil faster. Plants are drawing up water from the soil faster. And so basically rainfall doesn't have as much time to soak deeply into the soil, and it doesn't hang around as long in the soil once it gets there. Turning to the future forecast. Future forecasts are not as accurate as past forecasts, unfortunately, because we don't know what's actually going to happen. But the outlook for the next couple of weeks actually has a few glimmers of hope, but nothing particularly solid. First chance is over the next 24 hours or so. There's a cold front slipping southward across deep South Texas. And this shows one computer model's forecast of rainfall over the next 24 hours. And basically the southern portion of the state from around Corpus Christi, Laredo south is expected to have a chance of isolated thunderstorms. So certainly nothing widespread, but chances for somebody to get lucky out there. The next chance for precipitation that's decent, at least, is over the weekend, where the next cold front is going to come southward, and the cold front itself is supposed to be fairly dry, but it's expected to stall around the southern tip of Texas, and a lot of tropical moisture is supposed to get caught up in it. Right now, there's a bit of uncertainty as to how far north the rain will extend. This is one computer model forecast. Other possibilities would have it having more widespread rainfall across South Texas. It's also possible it'll mainly focus on northern Mexico and miss us. But this is one we'll be keeping an eye on because it has potential for producing a lot of rainfall. And it would not be surprising if we actually had a tropical depression or tropical storm spin up in the Gulf of Mexico around Sunday or Monday associated with this thing. It looks like if anything does develop, it'll probably stay offshore, maybe move eastward toward Mexico. But it's going to be the first chance for any sort of tropical activity this year. Then we have a couple more dry days, and then the next chance of rain is actually a bit farther north, maybe next Tuesday or Wednesday when the next weak upper level disturbance comes along. This one is not going to be substantial rain by any stretch of the imagination, but at least it's forecast to occur in a place where the tropical event this weekend is forecast to probably miss. So it might help even things out, although it won't be a drought buster by any means. After that, the computer models actually bring us into what finally I'd characterize as a more typical springtime pattern for Texas. This happens to be a forecast for a week from Saturday, going on into a week from Sunday, so the weekend after this one coming up. And it features a disturbance coming in from the west, triggering severe weather across North Texas, and perhaps a squall line moving southward into South Texas region. This is way out in the future. We're talking 10 days, and in particular, the timing of this event is still quite up in the air. But it does seem like we're going to move into a more typical May rainfall pattern. Whether or not that actually brings relief to South Texas is going to depend upon the specific course of the weather disturbances that proceed to develop. So to summarize, here's my bottom line. This particular drought we're having is bad in part because it's been so hot. And yeah, that's part of the long-term temperature trend we've seen across Texas. Temperatures are running about 2 degrees warmer than they used to be. We do have some rain chances about every few days for the foreseeable future. The wettest possibilities are this weekend. The farther south you are, the better your chances. And then possibly sometime around next weekend when we get a more typical severe type storm system developing to the north. Overall, the computer models are forecasting somewhere around 1 to 2 inches across the area, but it won't be as evenly distributed as that. So my forecast is some places may miss out completely. There may be places that get a thunderstorm camped over them for a couple hours and manage to pick up 4 inches. On the whole, this is a forecast of near normal precipitation over the next couple of weeks, which is better than the ridiculously dry conditions we've had the past couple of weeks. And probably the best news of all this is the weather patterns aren't going to really favor getting strong winds from the southwest for at least the next 10 days or so. So we won't have those conditions where things dry out super quickly. But we will be staying fairly either warm when we get the tropical moisture or fairly dry as those cold fronts come through. So that's my forecast. I'll turn it back over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, John. So I think that's at least better news than what could be, and I think suggesting that there could be a change coming, I'm pretty happy to hear that. Let's hope that we can maybe get a cool patch in our temperatures too, so that the rain doesn't evaporate away before it becomes useful. So thank you very much for that. I'll now hand over to our next presenter. Next, we're going to hear from Victor Murphy. Victor is the Climate Services Program Manager for the National Weather Service Southern Region, which includes the state of Texas. He routinely participates in drought monitoring and the issuance of climate products from the various National Weather Service weather forecast offices across Texas. And Victor, I'm going to pass the presenter baton over to you. I hope this works. And as soon as you're ready, you are good to go.
Okay, that should be it right there. Does that show up okay there, Joel?
Yeah, okay, we're seeing that fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, let me forward my screen. So good morning, or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Murphy. I work with the National Weather Service Southern Region Headquarters in Fort Worth. I'm the Climate Service Program Manager for our region, and work very closely with Dr. Nielsen-Gammon in preparing, the weekly drought USDM drought monitor depiction, and also provide guidance and support, et cetera, to the forecast offices in across Texas that provide our forecasts and climate updates, et cetera. So yeah, I had a real quick summary from our briefing a couple weeks ago. This is my summary slide from a couple weeks ago. As John pointed out, we basically said no improvement for the next 2 weeks. I think that turned out pretty well. For week 3 through 5, we said which will be basically this weekend through the end of May. We said that it looked like some improvement would be had. We had pretty high confidence that would be the case at Victoria, perhaps less confidence at Corpus and Brownsville. At the time, most spots were in about a 1 to 10 year drought in general, but of course they're exacerbated by the high temperatures. And I think John did a wonderful job of pointing out, just the increase in temperatures that we're seeing, routinely these days, during pretty much any time of year. But of course, you take a 1950s type drought, which is still a drought of record in general for Texas, but toss in a couple degrees Fahrenheit worth of warming, like John pointed out, and you end up with obviously much worse results. I'm having problems advancing my screen here for some reason. Here we go. So if we outline basically with little to no rain the past 2 weeks, where we're at right now, couple of points here. Good things happen to those who wait, and patience is a virtue. We said the last 2 weeks would not be good. They weren't, but we do think that good things will happen to those of us who waited, and patience will be a virtue if you survive the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to do a real quick overview of the next couple of weeks and then do a longer term outlook through June. As John pointed out earlier, the last 14 days have seen very little rainfall across Texas. South Texas. Most of the areas saw less than 1/10 of an inch. A few locations here in Jackson County may have gotten a 1/2 inch to an inch or so. There was some heavier rainfall up towards Houston area, which is not too uncommon. And outside of a few stray thunderstorms, this one here that tracked from Zapata County eastward, and a couple that there's another couple that did not quite make it across the border. But in general, a lot of areas got 0. You can see the white area here is basically 0 precip for a 2 week period, and the very, very light blue is less than 1/10 of an inch. So unfortunately, we sort of were pretty correct as far as things, being bad the last couple of weeks what does the future hold? That's where, every meteorologist earns their salt. So real quick, Brownsville, they've only had just 1.09 inches of rain so far year to date. No change since we last talked, but except it's now the 6th driest in 143 years. Basically about a 1 in 25 year drought now, so they've obviously headed south in a bad way. Temperature is still the 2nd warmest year to date on record behind 2017, which will be a very common year. I think that 2017 year was the year that on John's map, which is on the dot on the far right on every single one. For Corpus, they've had 200ths of an inch since we last chatted, I believe. So they're still looking at about a 1 in 13th driest year to date, 133 years, about a 1 in 10 year drought. But once again, tossing the temps, 5th hottest behind 2017 again. And for Victoria, I thought John's stats for Victoria is really very compelling. If you look at it going back into last fall, and I chose November 1 time period through today, and they've had 7.89 inches over that 6-month period, which is about 47% of normal. That's about where they were last time we did this. They were at 7 inches exactly last month, 47% of normal. Here they are still 47% of normal. They've gotten 0.89 inches in 2 weeks' time, which is still, I believe, below normal for this time of year. But I think it's probably allowed Victoria areas to at least sort of stay status quo as far as the drought goes. No improvements, certainly, but at least no degradation like, the Corpus area and further south is seen. Once again, temps, for this 6-month period, 4th hottest on record, once again, behind 2017. So we still have 4 hotspots of drought out there. This hasn't changed since 2 weeks ago either. One's out here in the Eagle Pass, Maverick County area. Another one here in Zapata County. A third one down in Cameron County, which probably see some increase in this week's drought monitor as far as the amount of extreme drought goes. And then also the 4th area up here in the Victoria area and the Jackson County area. So going forward, this is the 5-day rainfall forecast from the National Weather Service Weather Prediction Center, or WPC for short. And you can see the purple area there is basically 1.5 inches. So it looks like in general from about Corpus Christi to about maybe Laredo or so southward. For the next 5 days, they're forecasting about 1 to 2 inches of rainfall along and south of that line. Could be some heavier amounts, as John pointed out, down right along the lower Rio Grande Valley, maybe some 2 to 3 inch totals. And looks like it should be about a 24-hour event, maybe a little bit longer than that. Should start sometime Friday night, taper off Saturday night or early Sunday. Obviously, some places in lower Rio Grande Valley that have only seen an inch of rain or in the first, 125 days so far this year, could see twice that in 24 hours time. As John pointed out, some areas will receive less than this, unfortunately, perhaps less than, half inch or so, but, others may well receive in excess of, 3 inches or so. Rainfall, unfortunately in South Texas, Texas in general, tends to be very non-uniform. Another thing worth pointing out is as you work your way north where the rainfall amounts taper off. So for the Victoria area, looks like perhaps closer to about 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch or so. So heaviest amounts, once again, along the Rio Grande, perhaps even south of the Rio Grande, but as you work your way northward, amounts taper off. Either way, very good probability of some good rainfall this weekend across our area, especially the lower Rio Grande Valley. This is a box and whisker chart. This comes from the Weather Service National Blend of Models, which is a compilation of all the models. I pulled this together for Brownsville. And it's for a 24-hour period, pretty much running from about 7 p.m. Friday night to 7 p.m. Saturday night. You can see the median rainfall that's forecast for Brownsville from this national blend of models is about 1.6 inches. And that's the most likely, rainfall amount. 25% chance of seeing more than 2.3 inches. By the same token, 75% chance of getting 0.6 inches or more. So there's also a 25% chance of seeing less than a quarter, less than 0.6 of an inch. So bottom line is pretty good numbers here. Once again, the event should start Friday night and sometime early, should end Saturday night or Sunday. Here is the CPC 2-week outlook. This is from yesterday. It's Climate Prediction Center. So this runs from the 13th through 19th, which does not include this weekend's event. So we're looking at week 2 now, and good news, or more good news, as John pointed out, we do see an increased chance for above normal rainfall, or higher than normal chance for above normal rainfall across just about all of Texas, but especially about Corpus Christi area northward. As John pointed out, this next event, which looks like it should be sometime next weekend, with more of a typical type event impacting more of the higher latitude parts of Texas. The further south you go, probably the probability for above normal rainfall should dwindle a little bit, but still nonetheless, good news for the area as a whole. This is from the North American Ensemble Forecast System. It's sort of a ensemble of various forecasts. It shows for a 2-week period, which would be the, I sort of highlighted the wettest time period, which is May 16th through 18th. So once again, that's pretty much next weekend. So it looks like, good rainfall dump this weekend. Looks like another one coming in next weekend with not much in between. But you can see basically this is the probability of a half inch or greater for next weekend. And it shows about a 20 to 40% chance of half inch or greater across the area for next weekend, with obviously the greater probabilities of this occurring the further north you go. Looking forward into June, this is a couple of models here, which this one here is a specific model called the CFSV2. It's the National Weather Service Long Range Model. This is one specific model. And this is the outlook for June. You can see a lot of blues and greens here, which signifies above normal rainfall. And you can see once again, basically Corpus northward, a pretty strong probability of above normal rainfall occurring. That signal sort of tapers off as you work your way southward. So it looks like maybe a good dividing line somewhere along the lower Rio Grande Valley. And here in the top right, this is a blend of models. It's called the North American NMME multi-model ensemble, a combination of various models. And it also shows same thing as actually models are surprisingly consistent or similar. Basically Corpus Victoria northward or northeastward, strong tilt towards wetness. As you work your way south, though, that tilt sort of goes away. So the lower Rio Grande Valley looks like this weekend is going to be the weekend for hopefully getting some significant improvement. Chances seem to dwindle after that, or at least are less likely compared to further north. And this is the U.S. Seasonal Drought Outlook, which got released a couple of weeks ago, and it goes through the end of July, and it does show improvement, through July, incremental improvement. But by the end of July, it basically calls for drought to remain but improve. So in other words, if you're in D3 right now, you'll improve to D2 or better. If you're in D2, you'll improve to D1 or better. And then right now, if you're in D1, you'll be pretty much D0, which is not considered drought. So longer term, good news also for the area. And just want to point out again real quick that Victoria, May and June are the wettest 2-month periods during the year, wettest 2 consecutive months. So once again, really key or very important for Victoria area to get near normal to above normal precip during this time period. And of course, Brownsville and Corpus rainfall amounts are a little bit more muted during May and June. And so here's a summary real quick. Short term, very beneficial rainfall this weekend. Looks like 1 to 2 inches south of the line from Corpus to Laredo, maybe a half inch to an inch north of that up towards the Victoria area. Some amounts along the Rio Grande Valley could see in excess of 2 inches. Intermediate term still looks pretty positive. Once again, I think it would focus on next weekend. I'm looking for maybe a half inch amounts, perhaps up to 1 inch. Unfortunately, amounts should taper off as you work your way southward. Longer term, obviously, the forecast skill diminishes, but the longer term models are showing, at least the month of June, a continued tilt towards near normal to above normal rainfall, especially as you work your way north, where the lower Rio Grande may be more, along the lines of near normal, or equal chances perhaps of either above normal or below normal or near normal. So basically a moderate to high confidence of improvements in the drought monitor, through the rest of this month based on this weekend's event and plus next weekend's events. Lesser confidence, but once again, based on longer term models, we do think there'll be continued improvement, at least perhaps, slow but steady improvement through June. And real quick, this is our forecast offices that handle South Texas area. They have the phone numbers there. and the URL for their websites on the right-hand side. And that's all I have, Joel.
Great, thank you, Victor. John and Victor, do you want to discuss anything amongst yourselves before we open it up to questions, or would you like to just go straight into a couple of questions or comment that's come in?
I think we can go straight to questions. I mean, I think we both agree that this weekend's gonna be a good, good rain event for the area. And then perhaps we both also agree next weekend will be another good rain event for the area, especially maybe the Corpus area, Crossroads, South Texas Crossroads area, which would be the Victoria area, around that area. But beyond that, things are a bit murky. But
Well, I'm not quite as optimistic as Victor. I think this weekend is probably a good rain event. The farther south you go, the better the chances. But next weekend, I'm not even sure that it'll happen next weekend. It might be come a bit before that, a bit after, and certainly not clear weather. It's too early to tell, as far as I'm concerned, whether it's going to produce a lot of benefit or no benefit in South Texas.
Okay. So you're both suggesting that things are likely to improve, but your optimism is maybe on different levels about how that improvement will go. Like capturing that?
Yeah.
Pretty well.
We agree on how it might improve. We just are crossing our fingers with different intensities.
Great. So we've got one question and two comments that have come through on the question panel. I might go through the we'll do the question first and then the comments. The first question, it comes from Doug Cluck. Hello, Doug. Thanks for joining us. John, is May or June climatologically wet for much of Texas? So I guess it's a question of, are we coming into the time of year where we're expecting to see the rainfall totals increase anyway?
Yes, and Victor's been actually been pointing out those climatologies, so I think I'll let him address it directly.
Okay.
Well,
Victor?
John, I'm sure will correct me if I don't get this right, but I think the answer is both. May and June for a lot of Texas is the two wettest months of the year, especially from northwest Texas, the Wichita Falls area, down southward, along I-35 to the DFW area southward along I-35.
Yeah, you can go back and put up your bar chart.
Pardon?
You can go back and put up your bar chart showing the climatological.
Okay. And then also eastward, into the across to the Houston area. May and June is wettest time of year, and also extending as far south as Victoria. But for deep South Texas, very, very strong, pronounced wet season in September, October for both Corpus and Brownsville.
Yeah, the only difference being May and June is typically more reliable. October can be 20 inches in 1 year and 0 the next 3.
So
yeah, John, good point. So the May and June wet signal for Victoria area, or say for the I-10 corridor northward, is a lot more reliable than that September signal for Corpus Christi and Brownsville. Exactly.
Great, thank you. So we're coming up on a time of the year where the rainfall climatologically increases, and it's much less less variable or more reliable in late spring, early summer than it does when you're looking at late summer and early autumn sort of rainfall. So I guess that alone would be some good news. The next comment comes from Barry. It's a fairly long comment, so I'm going to read through it, and then I'll let both of you respond to the comment. So he writes, the 90th percentile for KMFE has been consistently showing 4 to 5 inches on NBM since Tuesday. Key may be whether an MCV event Friday night creates those totals or more, and where. For Saturday, potential for nor'easter type event near the coast could fill the gap if MCV favors the Hidalgo, Star, Zapata County area Friday night. So I think that's more commenting about how much and where that rain might come. John or Victor, do you want to respond to that, or think that is pretty well self-explanatory? I think no comments.
There's-
I think it,
There was a mouthful of acronyms in that question.
Yeah.
So I mean,
some
will
of them
there
I
be?
don't.
Yeah, I guess the question, paraphrasing, is, there'll be some big thunderstorm clusters around this weekend, or the possibility of some big thunderstorm clusters around, and where those clusters, traverse over or track over, we'll obviously see heavier, maybe even much heavier amounts than surrounding areas. So, but the mean aerial rainfall, I think, which is what the WPC map shows, which I showed earlier, the mean aerial rainfall should be in that 1 to 1.5 inch category, or 1 inch plus category for South Texas. Does it mean everyone will see 1 inch? No. Does it mean some areas might see 3 inches or more? Yes, possibly.
Okay.
But here, the chart I have there right now is the forecast mean aerial rainfall.
Great. I saw you had those bar charts up with the seasonal or the monthly rainfall. Did you want to go back and talk to those?
Yeah, sure, Joel. I'm sorry, I was able to finally get to them here. Yeah, this is the average monthly rainfall for Victoria, and as I mentioned, May is it's pretty clearly the wettest month of the year. June is about tied for second wettest. So combined, May, June, this is the wettest time of the year. So just from a climatological perspective, this is a time of year you should see improvement, and hopefully we'll indeed see that. But as John pointed out, this is pretty reliable feature. You have fronts which sort of come through the area, stall out, produce heavy rain. You have maybe eastward moving or southeastward moving, thunderstorm complexes or clusters that move over the area, pretty reliably so. Whereas for South Texas here, Brownsville, Corpus area, May, June are pretty much sort of middle of the pack. At least you can see the significant dry season starts in November, pretty much ends in April. So you do see an uptick in rainfall, during the summer months. But there's very pronounced wet signal here in September into October. But like John says, this is a little bit less reliable. This is sort of more driven by, years which you get these tropical, cyclones perhaps, or tropical rain events. So you might get, 5 to 10 inches one year and little to nothing the next year.
Got it. Very interesting. Thank you. There's Sandra has a comment. She just says that she's doing a rain dance, which is great. Thanks, Sandra. And then she also thanked you both for the informative webinar. Steve asks,
where is Sandra at, so we can see if she verifies or not?
She says she's here in San Diego.
Oh, okay. I believe it's down the lower valley.
I hope you dance well, Sandra. Steve asked,
we can reference that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, great. Steve asks, will we see better chances for rain coming off the Gulf? I'm not sure what time of year he's asking. Let's just look at the next few weeks. When will we start seeing that tropical incursion coming up through the Gulf?
Well, effectively, this weekend is even though it might be, even though we'll be getting a cold front coming through and conditions at the ground might be a little bit milder, there'll be a lot of humid air coming in from the Gulf and feeding into the thunderstorms. So it'll be the sort of event where we can get some very intense tropical type downpours. In terms of getting into sort of the regular tropical mode of rainfall, where we might get most of our weather coming from the southeast and maybe even just a daily thunderstorm along the coast, that's still a few weeks out. Usually doesn't kick in until around Memorial Day or a week before or after that. So we're still in the severe weather season type of weather patterns for a while.
Okay, so it's coming up. That's great. Thank you for that, John. Question for Victor. The exceedance probability plots you showed for Brownsville are interesting. Could you share a link through we can access similar POE plots for forecasts for particular locations? So
okay,
are those publicly available somewhere?
I need to check this here. So I'm going to ask for a blend of models, and I can send I can send you the email, Joel, and maybe you can, when you send out the copy of the slides to the, attendees, we can get that, out to everybody.
Okay.
It's a little bit convoluted trying to dial this thing up or, access what you want to access, but yes, it should be available.
Okay. I'm just making a note on my to-do list to add that to the follow-up email. All right, a few more. So Sandra commented again. She said it's 92 here in Eastern San Diego today. So feeling your drought concerns. And okay, yeah, okay, got it. There's a few comments that came through. John or Victor, I've got a question it's just for me. Have either of you looked at any outlooks for temperature? Are we expecting these high temperatures to continue through early summer, or will things return to, I'm going to say normal, even though I think that that's sort of a nuanced word. Are we expecting continued high temperatures?
Yeah, you're right. Normal is sort of a nuanced word. The seasonal forecasts are always at this point forecasting enhanced chances above normal, just because normal was defined as the average from 1981 to 2010, and we're already typically running well above that. As we get into June and start getting day after day of winds from the southeast and from the south, temperatures in most of the area are going to be driven by what's going on over the Gulf of Mexico and so forth, and that's been running fairly warm all year. So yeah, I'll let Victor talk about what he's showing, but just based on those basic principles, we expect many more days above normal than below normal for temperature.
Yeah, Joel, John's spot on. The map I have here shows that this is the 3-month temperature outlook in 3-month increments from CPC, the Climate Prediction Center. Starting in top left is June, July, August of 2020. It's this summer. And then one on the bottom right is May, June, July of next year. So it's basically 12 months worth of 3-month outlooks. And you can see for South Texas, every single one is above normal. A lot of that has to do with statistics, because as John pointed out, we use 30-year normals to verify our current forecast. And so the most recent 30-year normal period is 1981 through 2010. And here we are 10 years later, verifying against some normals that are 10 years old already. So, and as John pointed out, we're seeing just a gradual increase in temperatures, year over year. And as John pointed out, it's about 2 degrees Fahrenheit more now than what it was, say 30 to 50 years ago. So in general, if you play probabilities or play statistics, you're a lot more apt to hit an above normal for, all things being equal, not looking at individual events or anything, you're a lot more apt to hit a forecast for above normal temps than you are below normal. And I think this map here pretty much just shows that. I don't know the exact specifics, but I'd say in general, for every 1 month you might have with below normal temps, you probably have 8 to 10 months with above normal temps these days.
All right. Well, thanks for pointing that out. It's a bit of a downer, but I guess that's the reality of the world we live in right now.
Joel, at least that's not just a South Texas thing. That applies statewide, Gulf Coast wide.
Yeah, that's right. We can see that. So I think a takeaway from that is if you're relying on some soil moisture over the coming weeks and months for whatever you're producing, you'll have to think of ways for whatever rain does fall to capture that and keep that in, because evaporation is going to be high. A lot of that moisture is going to be leaving that pretty quickly with these temperatures as high as they will be. We have one more question. It's from Steve. He says, is there any hail or high winds associated with the weather this weekend? Victor? John?
Yeah, I don't think so, but I'll bring up I'm going to take a quick look at the SPC forecast just to make sure.
Yeah, same here, John. Let me look at that real quick.
So Victor, we're still seeing your screen. So
Okay.
if you pull something up, we'll all be able to see it.
So here's the forecast from the Storm Prediction Center. Let me see here. Here's today's forecast. Looks like just light green is just, general thunderstorm area. You can see covers pretty much the South Texas. That's day 1. That's today. Day 2 is tomorrow. And unfortunately, it looks like there is a slight risk of severe weather. I believe mainly large hail and/or winds in northwest Texas, the Panhandle. Nothing for South Texas, and this runs through 12Z Friday. And then for day 3, which is 7 a.m. Friday through 7 a.m. Saturday. Well, excuse me, that's also Thursday through Friday. So they actually don't have anything right now that goes out through that time period.
I'm looking at their day 4 through 8 severe weather outlook, and they say that basically there's low potential and low predictability, so there's really no basis for highlighting any particular area of being likely to get severe weather. I think that this is probably not a strong wind or hail situation. It seems more of a heavy tropical rainfall with potential flash flooding sort of situation. I think the air is going to be warm enough and humid enough that it's not really going to be conducive to severe thunderstorms of that type.
Yeah, and I agree, John. This is a day 4 forecast right here from SPC. It goes from 7 a.m. Saturday to 7 a.m. Sunday. It doesn't really have anything highlighted. So not to rule out perhaps an isolated, wind event or some hail perhaps, but I think by and large, the biggest threat, the biggest impact will be, localized heavy rainfall and flooding. As odd as that may sound in the middle of a drought.
Right, great. Thanks for answering that. Barry Goldsmith added a comment to help this answer. He said, anytime we see an MCV potential between April and the end of May, we are concerned in the RGV for the potential for hail and damaging winds. We'll see how the SPC outlooks evolve. Key will be how quickly the surface front sweeps through and cuts off the convective potential Friday evening. Barry, you use a lot of acronyms in your questions. I know what MCV is, but RGV and SPC are ones I'm not. I don't.
RGV is the Rio Grande Valley.
Oh, great.
SPC is a storm prediction center. So he's saying that the best that if we get some organized thunderstorms, especially as the cold front comes through on Friday evening, you can't rule out the possibility of strong winds and hail. But as things settle down thereafter and things become more tropical, the danger will diminish.
Got it. That's clear. And John, thanks for interpreting the acronyms for me.
CAO.
Thanks. We might wrap it up there. Thank you very much for your expertise, both John and Victor. I'm gonna just show my screen to finish up. We would like to invite all of you to join us again in 2 weeks to follow up again on what the drought conditions and the weather forecast and outlook will be. So that will be Wednesday, the 20th of May, again at 1 p.m. Central Time. And we will post the recording of this video on the website drought.gov. There will also be a link to it in a follow-up email. And we hope that you will all join us again then. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Yeah, thanks.